Hello traders, welcome to the Weekly Outlook and Setups volume 242. Iliya here. You know what we're going to be doing, having a look at the markets, how they developed this week, what kind of opportunities we had, and most importantly, what we can expect for the upcoming week. This week was rather tricky. We were very slow Monday, Tuesday, and even Wednesday, and then we had pretty much two extremely crazy volatile days, which made it a little bit hard to trade. But right now, going into the final week of May, we could potentially have some clear setups. So of course, let's dive into the charts. Let us start by framing the trading week by having a look at the economic calendar first. Now, what we can see on Monday is we have pretty much a bank holiday for the US and a bank holiday for the pound. And then we have some Euro news, but again, will Monday move? I don't think so, especially with a US bank holiday, because usually Mondays they tend to move in New York session. Pretty much, again, London opens. London is usually very choppy on Monday. But then when New York opens, with the volatility of the two markets right now being opened, right, London and New York, then we get some moves. But with a bank holiday, Monday is a skip. Tuesday, we have some USD news here. So definitely tradable. Nothing much in London. So again, New York could be the mover. Wednesday, CPI here for the Euro. Doesn't have a time, which is strange. But Wednesday also pretty tradable. What I see is that we have Aussie CPI, extremely important. Here we also have Aussie retail sales, so the Aussie could move very nicely this week as well. Thursday, some Euro news and also a lot of USD news, making it very good to be trading as well. And on Friday also, Euro news, USD news, Chicago PMI here, PCE price index, very volatile this one by the way. So it looks like a very nice week. There is nothing much to worry about. Every single day we're having USD news, so the focus will be potentially to trade during New York session and try to catch like the manipulation during London or just like a very quick trade during London. But it looks pretty good. It's the final week of the month, which potentially can expand or it can start pulling back depending on what has happened so far. But I do believe we're gonna have an overall clear week starting from Tuesday all the way to Friday. So of course, let's jump into the technicals right now. Alright, here we go with the DXY. Now on the monthly time frame, what are we doing so far this month is we are pretty much pushing down. Now we did not take out the previous monthly high to potentially take out liquidity and then to start heading lower, but we started heading lower. So if you just look in terms of the candle, right, previous monthly high and previous monthly low being liquidity points, then that could potentially be the current drawn liquidity, the previous monthly low. Now, how are we gonna potentially get there is by, of course, having something on a lower time frame. And we can see on the weekly, this previous monthly low is that beautiful weekly swing low. And pretty much if this market is about to go down, so here we have that weekly bullish imbalance. The market held very nicely, pushed higher, created the new weekly bullish imbalance that again suggests order flow. But then we're breaking that bullishness. And then, of course, we started responding from this sell candle, which is your OB candle, right? The market taps in, kind of reacts, comes in again, reacts. It's kind of struggling a little bit within that area. But if we start breaking lower, I do think we can even very easily run towards these lows because then there are no struggle areas. There is nothing to potentially stop price from running very nicely below this low, taking this one out. But again, this is a very long-term forecast. So for now, I deleted my line. So for now, I'm going to be focusing on that previous monthly low as a drawn liquidity. The thing that I don't like is that I don't see a lot of bearishness right now. And you can see this week, we didn't do much. We are closed as an inside bar. So next week, we can expect a breakout either above the previous weekly high or below the previous weekly low. What is more likely to happen? Well, of course, we can read the lower time frames and we drop to the daily time frame and you can see since pretty much the middle of May, we have been pulling back, but in a very choppy manner. Now, we first had this daily bearish imbalance that we thought the market is really going to flush from, right? But then pretty much we opened, Monday did nothing, Tuesday did nothing, and then Wednesday we had an expansion, which again, okay, are we going bullish? Then Thursday was extremely volatile. We had a massive push down and then a very massive push up. And then Friday started reversing. Now, what makes sense to me to see on the daily is that we did not create a bullish imbalance on the daily. And you know, nowadays I look a lot at imbalances because they show me pretty much the current momentum. And this overall bullish push here Is that even a push? It is a correction. Now, if you just look to the left overall, we have this overall area. That is our overall, you can call it OB, you can call it a retest area, you can call it a range, whatever you want to call it, right? But this is potentially where the market came back to retest. You can see, for example, from the bodies, this buy to sell, right? This is where the market potentially had a an accumulation, then it pushed lower, then it pulls back, right? Range, initiation, mitigation, continuation, right? This is another one of those SMC terms that I've studied as well. And right now it looks like we want to roll down. Now there is nothing to potentially stop price on the daily to be reaching also this daily low. So then of course, as we make our way down to the forward time frame, it was super tricky this week, like super tricky. On Wednesday, there was a quick long here that happened very late. Then we came up, took it out. Then we didn't form anything bullish. Then the market came all the way to sweep this one. Then it pushed up again. And then on Friday, it just reversed. So it was like an up and down, and up and down, right? So no clear trend. Right now, once again, we pulled back very deep. We came back to, again, retest this overall range to the left. And we had these bullish imbalances. Right now, we're failing them with a lot of bearish. Now, we have this hourly bearish, and we also have this hourly bearish imbalance. Now, in terms of structure, it's super tricky. I mean, structure was overall bullish, and right now I would definitely love to see for the market to break below this low and close below this low, because what you can see is happening right here is we have a pretty nice trend line. The market is right now breaking it, but again, I don't look at trend lines, never, so I don't even know why I drew this. But currently, I see that we have shifted towards bearishness. But in order for us to confirm that bearishness, I would like to see for the market to either pull back into this zone here, retest it, make a new imbalance going lower, and then for me to potentially start chasing it lower and of course going short. It could pull back into the upper one as well, definitely possible. Then of course, if I start seeing new bearish imbalances, then I would also be interested. Now for a long scenario, I just don't see the longs on the DXY right now. You can definitely try to prove me wrong, but I don't see, like from this low, it doesn't make sense for the market to tap this very precise level and to start making a long. I do agree if we sweep some very important lows and then potentially fuel move higher, all right, but this to me was just a nasty pullback. So right now the market can potentially start dropping. Do we have news? Not entirely, like we don't have a very important news to cause like a very massive push lower. So are we going to be waiting for the week after the incoming week, which is probably going to be NFP, to push lower? I don't know, but I focus on the short term, and this is what I'm looking on the short term. Potential shorts, but first things first, I want to see a pullback, and I want to see a new order flow range lower, which is a range with an imbalance going lower, to confirm that some of these imbalances are holding and that we are potentially starting to form bearish structure and bearish order flow. So I am overall bearish on the dollar. Let's see how the other pairs are looking like according to that. Alright, Euro USD, also super tricky pair recently. Now what we actually did on the monthly time frame already is we took out the previous monthly high. Okay, so we have reached some sort of liquidity, and you can see we're already getting a little bit of a reaction in terms of the monthly. But again, we had this push, we had this pullback, we had this also bullish imbalance that the market tapped in first time, tried to push, failed, then it broke it. But right now it still looks like it's respecting it, and it could potentially go higher. Then we drop to the weekly time frame, and what I truly love about EU right now is that unlike the DXY, let me just double check if that is the case. Yeah, so the DXY invalidated a new bearish weekly imbalance from forming, but Euro USD did not. So here we are having actually a weekly bullish imbalance, but we also took out the monthly, right? But this is pretty much your PMH, previous monthly high. So the very big question right now is, are we going to pull back into that weekly zone in order to head higher? That's the biggest question, and I do think it's quite possible, because again, in this case, this low is going to be the previous weekly low, and we're having that imbalance, and that is a very powerful formation. When you have a daily imbalance or a weekly imbalance, it's very powerful because you're literally like waiting for your previous weekly high to be swept, or in the daily scenario for a previous daily low to be swept. And then you usually get both liquidity and then both that rebalance to then potentially start seeking the opposing side of the liquidity. So looks very good. Now, how would we know if this weekly zone is not going to get tapped? Is by looking at the lower time frames. Now, what we can see on EU is, again, since we took out this previous monthly high and the market tried to push higher from this zone here, it tried right? And then it failed. So chop on Monday, chop on Tuesday, then Wednesday expanded, and then Thursday was extremely crazy. We had a massive run up, and then we had a massive run down. And then on Friday, we had a bullish day. So this Friday makes things a little bit sketchy, because right now, again, keep in mind, we have this weekly bullish imbalance that was created. On the daily time frame, we're already pushing away. So would it make sense for the market to make a massive drop and then a big push? Definitely could happen. But then we drop to the forward time frame, which is where, again, we're having that similar situation to the DXY. We had this bearishness here. I was actually more short biased on Friday, although I didn't take a single trade on EU. This week there wasn't really anything ticking to my plan, but I took 2 nasty losses on AU. I'm gonna show you that later. But currently we're having this probably bullish, and also we're having that lower one. Now I would definitely love for the market to move from the upper one, because if it comes all the way down, like what it's gonna do, like a push and a pullback and then a push, and then again it's starting to look like a consolidation. So what I would really love to see in order for the market to confirm that it's gonna go higher from here is for the market to tap this hourly zone in order to start pushing higher and making new order flow higher. If this hourly zone fails, right, and even if we make new bearish hourly zone, then that could potentially drive us into the weekly. Okay, so those are pretty much the 2 scenarios on Euro USD. Again, we're not having one of these weeks where it's just like, all right, this is what I'm looking for, absolutely 100% sure. And even sometimes if you have this, a lot of the times it just doesn't play out. It's strange, but when you have an extremely clear setup, usually it gets invalidated, right? So currently this is the state of the market. The very recent potential liquidity that we can target is this high here. Even if you want to get more fractal, it's this high. So pretty much personally, I will be looking for the market to pull back into this hourly imbalance, respect it, start pushing higher, make a new hourly bullish imbalance. And then from there, I would be looking potentially for a new bullish order flow to start getting created. And then of course, for us to head for this high. All right, because you can see it's super flat. It's very nice. It's a lot of liquidity here, and there is nothing to stop price from just pushing very, very nicely higher. So looks very good for longs once again, but then the main question is, don't forget, are we going to go from this hourly zone, or are we going to make our way to the weekly and then potentially start going higher from the weekly? How would you know? Is by looking at the hourly zones. Are they respected? Are they not? If they're respected, going higher. If not, going lower to the weekly. All right, so that's the game plan for EU. Having a look at GU, now currently I'm fully avoiding this pair. I actually even removed it from my list. It's gotten quite choppy, and I actually just started focusing on EU and AU, which are 2 very, very nice pairs. Now this one again is tapping into that monthly zone, and so far we're having a pretty nice bullish monthly candle. Dropping onto the weekly time frame, what we're also having right now is also something pretty nice, which could potentially make it a little bit more tradable, because right now we're trading from a monthly zone, from a monthly imbalance, and right now from that monthly imbalance we're creating a weekly bullish imbalance, right? Which of course gets us closer overall to that monthly high here. And you can see to the left there is pretty much nothing to stop price. We had this swing high that was taken already and broken, so that's pretty good. So is the market going to pull back to that weekly and push higher? It's a very similar situation to Euro USD. We got to look at the lower time frames, and what we see is that it was... Why I don't like GU is that GU is usually very fast for me, and it's kind of... Whatever strategy that I've used, right? Usually GU goes... It loves like the sweeps and then going against the sweeps, or like it's very fast. It doesn't usually pull back into my zones and stuff like this. So I just don't trade it, right? I've always had this relationship with GU, never could have found any trades on GU, and if I found one, it's gonna be a stop loss. I don't know why. Maybe you guys have some of these pairs, right? But right now we don't have anything on the daily. You can see it was absolutely, wow, incredibly choppy this week, right? Apart from Friday, that kind of pushed higher, but it's not making any new areas, so that could very easily also run into the weekly. But very likely we're gonna have something on the voyage, which is pretty much what we have across all pairs right now. We're having like these hourly zones. In fact, here we have quite a few, right? I'm gonna mark them all. Apart from the last one, I just don't want to see for the market to pull back into the last one. Usually the first one is the key. second one, and then the third one, like then it's just gonna start looking like a reversal, and then very likely it's gonna come to take the liquidity. Okay, so same situation here for as EU. If we did pull back into that one and we start respecting it and pushing higher, then that's gonna be great. We can have a very easy target of this high, and then eventually starting to target, well, yeah, this is quite far away, right? But of course we're gonna keep flowing with the market. If this one is invalidated, right, and we make a bearish volatile zone and we start disrespecting this one, we start disrespecting this imbalance here, then we can drive into the weekly, which is exactly the same situation that we have on EU. We just have to wait. We just have to see also for the DXY. Now, the DXY does not have a reason to be pulling back. It doesn't have an imbalance, which tells me that EU and GU might potentially also not want to pull back into that weekly. But it could be that they actually pull back and then the DXY ends up like coming to sweep the previous weekly high as well. So that's GU, similar game plan to EU, looking to see how these very recent fall imbalances are going to work out. If they don't, then I'm going to be targeting shorts into that weekly zone. All right, let's have a look at AU. Now, the first thing I see is that we're taking a lot of liquidity here in the form of this little swing high on the monthly, and you can see we're very nicely rejecting as well above it. Dropping onto the weekly time frame now, also what I don't like here is that we did not have a weekly bullish imbalance, and we have a super tiny one right here. I mean, this is something that we should be aware of because eventually the market could pull back into it, and you can see it's so tiny that I can't even draw it, but let's do it like that. On the weekly time frame, we had very nice bullish, but again, we took a lot of monthly liquidity, and this week we had a bearish week. Now, again, super key question, is this one, what is this one going to do right now? We're so far inside bar. So again, this week was an inside bar of the previous candle. So right now we can potentially forecast the potential breakout, or at least some sort of a liquidity grab. Now, this could be the one, or this could be the one. Looking at the current weekly candle, it does look like it might want to take the low, maybe even tap into the weekly imbalance because we took out monthly liquidity. And if you take out the monthly liquidity, this is something that I reflected also this week, is that from monthly liquidity, you cannot expect, for example, your 4-hourly zones to hold because you're taking a super massive liquidity point, right? And of course, if you take monthly liquidity, then it's going to potentially try to rebalance, monthly rebalance, or at least weekly, one time frame lower, right? So currently, is it possible that we're pulling back to rebalance this weekly imbalance? Definitely possible. How would we know? Looking at the lower time frames. Now, on the daily time frame, again, this to me, this is what I targeted this week. This low, that's the previous weekly low. This is a daily swing low that, again, it looked like there wasn't much to stop price from reaching there, but it didn't reach it. Now, again, Monday and Tuesday was choppy, then Wednesday very nicely expanded, right? I actually traded on Wednesday, but I got a nasty stop loss just because I entered at the wrong time, right? I entered at the lunch hour, and then pretty much when New York opened, it stopped me out, and then it just rushed, which is quite a stupid mistake, but again, it happens. And then on Thursday, I tried to short it, but then the market decided to very massively pull back all the way up, and then just to massively push all the way down. And then Friday just swept previous daily low and pushed higher. So there is nothing to the daily to potentially guide us going lower. And then we drop to the hourly. Again, we had these. So for example, my loss that I took was from this hourly zone on Thursday. And then pretty much I took a 1 hourly trade on Wednesday. It was actually the one that I showed you on the flow of the markets Wednesday. All right. So currently we have that same situation. We had bearish imbalances right now. They're disrespected with, we have this bullish imbalance as well. So exactly the same situation that we have right now across all the pairs. We're having these hourly zones. We don't have much on the daily, all right? So are we going to disrespect these hourly zones to potentially then guide us into these lower liquidity points, or are we going to respect them to then potentially, of course, give us those signs that the market potentially wants to go higher? That's pretty much it. That's what we're looking for right now. Well, we've covered only 3 pairs so far, but this is pretty much the overall situation. Now, if this fall imbalance fails, then of course I'm going to be looking to, of course, first of all, target this low, then target that low. That has been my drawn liquidity for a very long time, but so far the market fails to reach it so far. And then of course, after we take this one, I'm gonna observe, all right, are we gonna pop to that weekly imbalance, or are we immediately gonna start reversing? But then if the market respects this volatile zone, then I'm just gonna go long. All right, so pretty much the trade I took, again, I'm not gonna be doing breakdowns. I do plan to make some more breakdowns, but somehow I'm currently in a little bit of a hustle mode, a little bit of a learning mode, right, since 3, 4, 5 months right now. So I'm not making any educational videos, I'm not making any like trading setups, breakdowns. I'll just focus on myself. But this was the 1 hour imbalance that I was looking for, targeting this low, and I did take the trade from, I'm gonna show you exactly right now, from here with a stop loss right there. And I did take this trade at the lunch hour of London, so I then very nastily got stopped out pretty much within the dead hour. The market tends to consolidate, took out this high, and then there was an absolutely beautiful re-entry, but again, I took my bullet for the day, didn't want to strike back, probably could have, again, doesn't matter. It was a good loss, and I did reflect on my timing as well. So after this loss, of course, I learned a little bit, kind of reminded myself about the timing aspect. And then the other trade that I took was from here. There was a short that I took, yeah, from here with a stop loss like that, trying to, of course, trace it lower. It was actually pretty easy trade. Definitely could have taken the Asian low, reacting from this volatile zone. Didn't have anything to stop it from potentially going lower, but yeah, then it just consolidated and it just decided to massively rush higher, and then all of a sudden massively rush lower. Like, yeah, quite interesting price action this week. London was always shitty, and then we moved very late during the day. Like, the market usually, my time, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, it doesn't move. That is like London has closed already, and it's kind of getting also very close to New York close. But we had some extreme moves this week during that time, which was rather strange. So that's my performance on AU this week. Not happy with it, not gonna lie, but of course it's just minus 2R. Next week, 1 or 2 wins, we're back in the game. So that's the game plan for AU. NZUSD, probably very similar to AU. We are having actually a very nice monthly bullish candle so far, which looks pretty good. On the weekly time frame, unlike AU, NU actually did form a weekly imbalance. That could be, again, one of those times when you're, for example, trading EU and GU and you have to pick one, which one is better, right? So for example, right now you can see GU is stronger, so you might actually want to go long on GU rather than EU. Or for example, AU, that is very weak and it didn't make a weekly imbalance, while NU has a beautiful weekly bullish imbalance right here, all right? So that's one of these times that you potentially have to switch pairs. On the daily time frame, however, it was super, like, since 16th of May, once again, nothing, right? Just some nasty spikes and nasty weeks and a pure consolidation. Now, again, we did form this weekly bullish imbalance. Friday is kind of pushing away, so are we going to pull back into that weekly or not? As I keep telling you, we're having that full hourly situation right now. There is like this full hourly zone, and then we have yeah, pretty much, we have one right here. I'm not gonna draw them because I want to see that very recent one get respected, because currently what we're actually doing on ANU is we're chopping around. If you just zoom out a little bit, we're just chopping around. So I would actually pretty much love for the market to actually pull back into that weekly zone and then start potentially getting setups from there. That's what I would definitely love to see, because right now we can start chasing price, but what you see is happening is we're currently trading in a consolidation. The market had a bullish imbalance here, it failed it, right? Then it didn't make anything bullish. Then it made a bearish imbalance here, it failed it. Right now it's making bullish, it's very likely also going to fail it. So keep in mind, we are trading in a consolidation right now. So I would definitely love to see for the market to pull back into that weekly and then go higher. So again, two situations. We either decide to go higher from the hourly when we, of course, start flowing with the market, targeting the highs, or if we disrespect the hourly and even get new hourly bearish imbalance to trade from, then that is going to guide us into that weekly. So overall, same game plan as on the rest of the pairs. Let's have a look at GOAT. Now, the first thing I see is that we took out the previous monthly high, and we are very nicely rejecting here, but we are at the same time potentially after this week we are going to be making a new monthly bullish imbalance, and now you don't get monthly bullish, you don't get monthly imbalances very often, so that is going to be very interesting to potentially wait for it to tap and then potentially go higher. Very interesting. Then on the weekly time frame, again, you can see it was actually this week that once again took out all-time highs. We were talking about how it's very easy for gold to reach all-time highs, right? So if you could get a long trade, that's great. But we took out all-time highs, and right now we're having a very massive bearish weekly candle. Now on the weekly time frame, there is nothing to stop price and push it higher, which gives me an overall bearish bias. And then you drop even to the daily, and on gold, we're having pretty much very nice daily bearish imbalances. And I guess this is quite normal because we took out all-time highs, we took out monthly liquidity as well, so very, very I mean, it's definitely usual for this to happen. So currently on the daily time frame, you can see the only things we have are some sort of reaction areas, like for example this guy right now could get taken, and then we can start driving already towards that monthly imbalance that is not yet created. But again, this week the key question to ask yourself is like to be a little bit more objective and realistic, and is to ask like, but again, you never know what is going to happen, but to ask like, is it very likely that this week the market is going to pull back and massively flush lower like this, right? Usually you know this by having a look at news. Like, do you have a lot of important news to potentially support such a move? We do have USD news every single day, so I would say it's definitely viable. Now pretty much what I'm going to be looking for is for the market to tap into this daily imbalance, and then that's very simple setup. That's it. Now on the volatility time frame, if we don't have anything bearish, which we don't, okay, but if we do get it, so if you start impulsing lower on the volatility time frame, then that could potentially drive us into that liquidity point. So that is going to be like when you get new bearishness towards the lows, and then you just flow with it instead of waiting for that daily imbalance to get tapped. Okay, that's pretty much gold. Very nice, very easy. I mean, I don't see any bullish signs on gold. Definitely looking for shorts. So the first target, of course, is going to be this low here. We just very recently took out this low. The market already looked like it reacted. So again, the main question right now for gold is, are we going to pull back into the daily? If we do, absolutely perfect. Okay, but if we start making new 4-hourly bearish imbalances going lower, then don't wait for the daily. Just keep going with the market because the momentum is strong and there is nothing pretty much to stop price and to cause it like to make a very big reaction. Usually you get those very big reactions if you have something to the left. Like say for example you have, I mean even this here, that was not retested, unmitigated imbalance, so that could have caused the market to potentially reject. But we took out this very massive monthly liquidity, so the market just dumped, all right? And right now with this kind of narrative that we have, sweeping previous monthly high and right now massively reversing, I do think it's quite a green signal to potentially go short. So then again, your main question is, how do you go short? Well, of course, that's part of your strategy. But personally, again, for me, either from this daily zone or from new 4-hourly zones that could get created. All right, let's check out some JPYs. Now, USD JPY has become very tricky, as you know. Now, we did not make a new monthly bullish imbalance. That is interesting. Dropping onto the weekly time frame, however, you know that we are coming from this weekly bullish imbalance. The market printed a very nice bullish. Then we had an indecision, and then this week we're overall kind of trying to push higher. But I think I had a look at it once during the week, and it's not looking great, right? We had this massive flush lower, started recovering, it took out this high. And then we didn't make any bullish imbalances. So within this whole push here, there is not a single daily bullish imbalance. That to me suggests that the momentum is not strong. Like usually when I see this, it tends to be manipulation, but not always. All right. So dropping then to the volatility time frame, this is pretty much the only time frame that we can work with. And pretty much when did this week start? Yeah, here bullish. The market came all the way down, potentially again to this zone, tap this imbalance, started rushing higher. Do we have we have a tiny little bit of an imbalance here, respected, then the market took liquidity, another forward imbalance, but chopped around, pushed higher, and right now the only thing we have is also this very small forward imbalance here that the market is actually already tapping. It already tapped it. Looking at this and not having any like I mean, yeah, the weekly is bullish. Good. Daily time frame is worrying me a little bit because we're not getting any bullish momentum on the daily in terms of imbalances. It's not necessarily required, but here I'm only trading the 4-hourly without any kind of confluence on the time frame above it. And usually I am scared to do this because I always start my analysis again from weekly and daily, and usually the daily is always going to give me something to work with. And when it does not, then of course the 4-hourly time frame is my last resort, but I always have like one at the back of my mind that I'm just trading 4-hourly time frame right now. So currently this is how it looks. It already tapped it, so can we already expand higher? Definitely could be, but we can start making some other random stuff as well. It was actually not a bad bullish week, so can we continue potentially with that bullish week? It's definitely possible. I don't even see where it could potentially come to take liquidity. Like again, previous daily low could definitely be nice. In terms of the weekly, it's probably not gonna make a weekly liquidity grab. We're having an expansion candle. It could be making a new bullish weekly imbalance if it doesn't cross this line. So I am just going to be looking for more. If I'm trading UJ, which I'm not, I'm going to be looking for new order flow ranges to potentially go higher to show me that it wants to go higher. And then of course, when you see this, it's just like this week. So you wait for Monday push, Tuesday pullback, and then as you start seeing the market printing the legs higher, well, that is pretty much when you get a confirmation that it's potentially going higher, right? So you don't need to catch this bottom here, right? You can just wait for this bottom to be formed, and then you see it starts forming new bullish imbalance. So if the only trade you caught this week was from here, absolutely perfect. You had a very clear draw on liquidity, had a very clear zone. Time also probably was nice, and then you pretty much hit take profit. This is pretty much the trades that I'm nowadays looking for, right? One good trade. So that's UJ. I would definitely require a little bit more development on that. Let's see how Euro Yen is doing. Monthly time frame very nicely pushing higher. It had a very bearish candle at a time, and right now it's turning fully bullish, which is quite nice. Now this one did not have a weekly imbalance here to react from, but we know that on UJ we have it. Weekly bullish imbalance is forming, driving us potentially towards the monthly high. That's good. Daily time frame, nothing on the daily. So again, the key question once again here is, are we going to pull back into the weekly to then get into the monthly, or are we just going to continue expanding higher? Nothing on the daily, which is something that always worries me. We had a daily imbalance here that didn't get tapped, and we're just continuing to push higher. But yeah, this week pretty much Monday pushed, then 3 days of chop, and then Friday pushed. So that is what pretty much made that week bullish. And then you can see on the 4-hourly time frame, it was absolute mess. So once again, same story here. I'm gonna make it quick because it's literally the same setup we have across the euro and the USD pairs as well. We're having these 4-hourly bullish imbalances. If they hold and continue pushing higher, then that drives us into liquidity. If they don't hold and even make bearish, then that drives us into the rebalance of that weekly zone. So that's it. Those are the two situations that I'm looking for. Does that mean that when the market taps this 4-hourly zone, I'm just going to rush into an entry? Absolutely not. I'm going to wait very carefully to confirm that this one is going to hold, and even to confirm even a new bullish leg, because the higher we go, the clearer it becomes that the market wants to take this liquidity. So again, even if you take a trade just from here, that's the highest probability trade, because then you know the market is going to take out this high. So you take a trade and the market takes it out. Okay, well, if you try to catch like the bottom from somewhere, usually that is the lowest probability thing to do, because you still don't know if that bottom is gonna form. So wait for it to pull back, wait for it to show you that it wants to hold, wait for it to give you the signs, and then you just find an entry. All right, that's Euro Yen, two situations. Let's wait and see. GJ looking quite similar to EJ, sorry, and in fact it's getting very close to that monthly high. Weekly time frame also has a weekly imbalance, but looking at how that imbalance formed, I just think this one is heading straight for the liquidity. It's heading straight for the liquidity, and then it will pull back into the weekly. So exactly what I told you about EJ, the closer we get to that high, the higher the probability it is to potentially get tapped. Now here you can see with the GBP pairs, like daily imbalance, not tapped. Daily imbalance here, not tapped. I don't like this. It just keeps running higher. Now we do have this daily imbalance to potentially work with, but looking at how Friday's candle is going, it is very likely also making hourly imbalances, which it is, right? There it is. So again, same story for all the pairs. Are we going to pull back into that hourly zone and start rallying higher? If we do so, that's very good. And I would actually pick GJ, because GJ, like the pound overall, is a lot stronger than the euro right now. So I would definitely look to take a long trade on GJ rather than on EJ, because this one is also getting very close to the liquidity. So it's very likely going to rush faster to the liquidity instead of like, for example, making, because here you can see this one has quite a lot of space. So it can mess around, it can pull back, and then it could go. While GJ, it could just rush for it. So if you do get a long trade on GJ, I think it's going to be a pretty high probability one. Now, if this one invalidates the hourly and builds a bearish one, then wait for the daily. And then maybe from the daily, we can potentially go. Now, if the daily fails, that means it's going to go to the weekly. But I think getting so close to that liquidity point, it doesn't make sense for us to start pulling back right now. We're first potentially going to take the liquidity and then start pulling back. So very clear targets on GJ. Let's see if we can get into a long trade. Let's have a look at the indices, starting from SPX. Now, of course, we are at all-time highs right now, and the market keeps kind of taking all-time highs, then retracing a little bit. Now, on the weekly time frame, we have, of course, created a weekly bullish imbalance right here. We also have one just below, and we even have one below. Now, again, we took out liquidity in the form of that previous monthly high, which is also all-time high. So right now, it's very likely time to start pulling back to rebalance a weekly imbalance or even a monthly one. But again, on the monthly, we just are coming from this monthly bullish. So I think it's very likely we're going to rebalance that weekly. Now, if we look on the daily time frame, it's probably going to be very similar to what we have on the Forex pairs. We're having like that weekly bullish imbalance, but then on the daily, we're having hourly imbalances to potentially go higher. On SPX, we have this little guy, and you can see to the left, we have this. Again, it was a very strange week until like Thursday, like took out that high once again, and then it just massively dropped. And then on Friday, we started pulling back immediately. And this also happened with EU, right? So slow, then a massive up, then a massive down, then a massive up, and then right, it's looking like that a little bit. It's not very nice. But currently, again, it's the exact same thought process. So are we going to pull back into that hourly zone and start holding to potentially push to new all-time highs? Or are we going to invalidate this hourly zone and then even print a bearish one to then potentially guide us into the weekly? That's it. It's that simple. You just have to be a little bit more reactive, as you should always be, because nothing is certain in the market. You never know what's going to happen. So what you just have to do is listen to what the market tells you and just flow with it, right? Of course, I do see that this bearish imbalance failed and we formed a bullish one, which is kind of giving me a slightly bit, I don't want to say high probability, but it looks pretty good for longs. But also at the same time, we are encountering this last buy to sell. That is technically your OB here. So that could definitely also cause the market to rush lower into the weekly. And knowing that we took out, that we took out overall, yeah, this liquidity point here, that is all-time highs. We took it out. I do think also with creating this weekly bullish imbalance, it does make a lot of sense for us to start pulling back a little bit to be filling these weekly imbalances. But again, how would we know? Look at the hourly time frame. If we get respect of this hourly zone and we continue pushing higher, then definitely all-time highs will be a new target. But if we don't, then targeting that weekly, and then from the weekly, you can once again start looking for longs. That's SPX. Looking at Nasdaq, just by the monthly candle, it looks even stronger than the one on SPX. And then, of course, we drop to the weekly time frame. You can see the weekly time frame on SPX was a little bit more of a pullback candle. Here, we're just breaking above and closing above the all-time highs. But again, I definitely do think it's going to be pretty nice that we pull back into that weekly zone to then potentially start going higher from there. Because on the daily time frame right now, you can see it was a rather choppy week. So we had, of course, this daily bullish imbalance. The market tapped and it took out the overall liquidity on Monday. And then we had like Tuesday and Wednesday just chopping around. And then Thursday with some news, with just massive up, massive down. And then Friday immediately starting to go in the opposite direction. So we're going to be having that exact same situation that we have, for example, with SPX, right? And with a lot of Forex pairs as well. We're having that weekly below, and then we're having this volatile time frame already starting to guide us towards new all-time highs. So very similarly here, I would like to see how the market is going to respond from that volatile zone, and if it does, then I'm gonna target all-time highs, and then after this, maybe we can initiate a pullback, okay? But if this volatile zone fails and we even print a new bearish one, then I'm just simply going to target that weekly. And that is the setup. I am not gonna complicate it here. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Longs from this volatile zone, provided that we get good confirmation, and maybe even a new leg higher. But if we actually start moving higher, then very likely we're gonna be trading 1 hourly zones towards the highs. If this one just gets violated, then that is driving me into the weekly. That's it. That's NASDAQ. US30, meanwhile, it is looking like the weakest index. It also took out all-time highs. It's very nicely rejecting. So this one is kind of already also tapping into weekly bullish imbalance. So a very different performance than, for example, what we have on SPX and NASDAQ. All right. So very strange. It's already tapping into that weekly zone, which means that we could start like potentially looking for longs. But at the same time, you drop to one time frame lower and you have this also very massive daily bearish imbalance. And this is super strange when it comes to US30, right? This one right now, we have this supply and demand sandwich situation where we're having a weekly zone tapped, while at the same time, you're having that daily zone. So if this market is going to go long, I will wait to see this daily zone tapped, react, break the reaction, and then to potentially look for it to go higher. You can even take a short from here, but that short is not going to be very high probability because simply we are coming from a weekly bullish zone. And weekly against daily, usually weekly is going to win, but that daily can potentially cause a reaction and even sometimes even take out that low and then to potentially reverse. So when it comes to the volatile time frame, wow, this one is extremely different than what we have on the rest of the indices, right? It's super weak. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm looking for. There is nothing to work on the volatile time frame. I know that a lot of traders, especially within the futures space as well, the main focus is on like ES and NQ, US30 or YM, not very widely traded, and I can probably see why, because it usually moves quite differently than those two, right? So let's see, US30 definitely doesn't look very good to me. I would wait for more development on this one. Meanwhile, NASDAQ and SPX definitely look a lot better. All right, so full circle back. Now we do have quite a couple of scenarios that we have to be looking for. The DXY, it doesn't have anything to potentially pull back to when it comes to a hard time frame bearish imbalance. Meanwhile, it's already printing 4-hourly bearish imbalances. In the meantime, however, for example, on EU, we're having that weekly bullish imbalance that print that we can definitely pull back inside. So the main overall narrative, the main overall vibe, or not vibe, but I don't know what to call it. It's a very similar picture across all the markets, is that we're having, for example, a hard time frame imbalance that can potentially get rebalanced, but the 4-hourly time frame is already showing us that the market is running away from it. So the key thing to observe is how these 4-hourly zones will hold. So is your USD going to hold from these 4-hourly zones and start pushing higher? Well, DXY will very likely do the same. Is GU going to hold from this 4-hourly zone and take liquidity? Or is it first going to rebalance and then take liquidity? I do think the liquidity is more likely first things first, and then we can maybe start pulling back. Same for the Aussie, right? The Aussie also has a weekly imbalance here. So is it going to start pushing higher from this volatile imbalance, or is it going to push lower to take liquidity, maybe even rebalance the weekly and then go higher? NZUSD, same thing. This one is quite consolidative, right? But it still has these volatile imbalances going higher. So are they going to hold, or are they going to get broken to then potentially guide us into that weekly zone? Gold looking quite bearish on this one, and on gold pretty much we have daily imbalances to work with, which is very nice. So all I'm looking for on gold is shorts. The key question is, are we going to pull back into the fall or into the daily, or are we going to be making new 4-hourly bearish imbalances to go lower and then to potentially target the liquidity? Okay. Now, JPYs, especially UJ, definitely not interested in this one, but EJ also, it has volatile imbalances going higher, nothing on the daily, but just on the volatile going higher, and then we have weekly below. So if the volatile fail, then that could mean we're going to go to the weekly, but if the volatile hold, then that means we're going to go to liquidity. Meanwhile, GJ is getting super close to that liquidity in the form of this monthly high. It also has a volatile zone to hold from. It also has a daily zone and it also has a weekly zone. Okay, so in this case, again, is the hourly zone going to hold and push price towards liquidity? That's the first thing. Is it gonna break to potentially tap into the daily and then push into the liquidity? But I really likely think that liquidity is gonna get taken first before we decide to pull back into that weekly zone. So it's either gonna hold from one of these two areas here. Indices, same thing. On SPX, we're having a weekly bullish imbalance. So is that going to get pulled back? Well, we have to judge the volatility. Is the volatility going to start pushing higher from that very recent imbalance? Or is it going to invalidate it in order to pull back into the weekly and then from there start pushing higher? Exactly the same with NASDAQ, although NASDAQ looks a lot more bullish than SPX. Also, very nice volatility imbalance going higher. Nothing to potentially stop it to the left. So I do believe like taking out the all-time highs first is very likely. So if you do get like a beginning of the week long setup into this one, I do think it's going to be a very good trade. If not, if this volatility zone is invalidated, then we drop into the weekly and then from there we can maybe look to go higher. US 30 looks super different than the rest, so I would very much likely not even look to trade that one. So that's the overall narrative for next week. We're having like weekly imbalances, but at the same time, the volatility time frame is already showing us signs that it wants to go higher without those weekly imbalances. So let's see if they get tapped, right? And let's see how the market reacts. It's the final week of May, so very important to close it strong. If you had a very good month, then of course relaxed. If you have a break even or a bad month, then of course keep striking, because it could be one day, it could be 1 week that changes the whole scenery of your month and of your weeks. Okay, so that's for me. Let me know how you perform this week. Let me know what trades you take. Let me know what is your favorite pair looking for into the upcoming week. I wish you good luck, trade safe, and catch you up into the next video.